Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
On my Uruvil, chapter 4, text 10. Does that mean as it is? That's a direct translation. Chapter 4, text 10. Translation and commentary by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Founder Acharya Viscon. Vita raga bhaya krodha manmaya mamupashritaha bhavo jnana tapasa putamad bhagavadataha. Vita raga bhaya krodha manmaya mamupashritaha bhavo jnana tapasa putamad bhagavadataha. So please read the word for word translation and purport. Krishna states here that many people have come to him by becoming completely purified. However, there are various obstacles to be crossed over before one can come to Krishna. If one is too much attached to this material world, he cannot become attached to Krishna. If one is too much afraid of the concept of God, then one cannot come to Krishna. And if one is angry towards God, if he feels animosity towards God, then he cannot come to Krishna. So when a person is freed from too much material attachment, from fear of God or the impersonal concept of God, and from animosity towards God, then his faith in Krishna can begin. Too much attachment to this material world. Srila Prabhupada, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada has analyzed in some little detail about these various material impediments to even beginning Krishna consciousness. Most people are too attached to this material world to take up Krishna consciousness very seriously. They may be a crore patty or a 100 rupee patty, but whatever it may be. But if one is too attached, one cannot become Krishna conscious. It's not only attachment to money, it may be attachment to anything, attachment to family. Putra dara grihadishu, Krishna states in Bhagavad-gita, that one may be too much attached to family members and home and all these things. Anishtam anavishvanga putra dara grihadishu. So, it is expected that people have some attachment to their family members, but if one is so much absorbed in them that he cannot even begin to think of Krishna, then obviously he can't come to Krishna. Or one may be attached to some bad habits. So these are all obstacles on the path of taking up pure devotional service. Now here, Prabhupada analyzes fear as being that which leads to an impersonal concept of God. That some people are not very attached to this material world, but they're also not attached to Krishna. And we'll find many saintly people in India who are actually very detached from this material world, but still not attached to Krishna. One famous example in Tamil Nadu was this Ramana Maharshi, who was definitely very detached from this material world. He was living a life of detachment, and people respected him for that as a saintly person, sadhu. But he wasn't attached to Krishna as a devotee. Now, Prabhupada analyzes here that this is actually due to fear. That people, they take up spiritual life, but they don't feel inclined to surrender to the personality of Godhead, Krishna. They may also be envious of the supremacy of Krishna. So they take up spiritual life, but not bhakti to Krishna. They're not Krishna bhakti, which we understand from Gita is the topmost stage of spiritual life. That even if someone is very much detached from this material world, if they're not attached to Krishna, then their spiritual life is still very much incomplete. One who has not tasted the nectar of chanting Krishna's names, even they may be very detached from this material world, but they're missing the real nectar of spiritual life. One who does not take pleasure in hearing about the wonderful pastimes of Krishna, then however much detached they may be from this material world, they're missing the actual nectar of spiritual life. And Vita Raga Bhaya Krodha. Krodha, that means kobam in Tamil. That if some people, they actually feel angry against God. Krishna they may not accept, but against God in general. They don't really know who is God, but they think if he's there, I don't like him. They think that, well, God should just do what I want, and if he doesn't, then, we reject God. Practically that whole DMK came up on that principle of being against God and religion. We can say that now that they're not in power. So
I think it's a politics, sir. Please change your...
No, we're not. We're talking... I'm not actually talking about politics. We're talking about principles that we can recognize in our daily lives. These things are going... This is what Krishna says here.
You also told that Ramana Maharshi has got fear with Lord Krishna. What? I don't know. What's the reason for that?
I'm giving practical demonstrations of what Krishna is stating here. I'm speaking from Bhagavad-gita.
Ramana Maharshi has followed Nirguna Upasana or Shakti.
Yes. Which means that not worshipping Krishna. Which is the point that's being made by Krishna in this verse.
You can translate that, sir.
So these raga, vita raga, bhaya, krodha, attachment, fear and anger. These are three principles by which one does not come to Krishna. There's one incident, this is from maybe about 70 years or more ago. If we give from the past, then people don't mind, because they're not attached to the past. If we give from the present, then people become upset. Or this is an example from Assam, so no one will get upset, because we're not attached to Assam. If Assam falls into the ground tomorrow, no one here will care. So one man came to our Param Guru, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada, and told him, I had a friend who he became very religious at one point. That his daughter contracted some severe illness. And that man, he became very religious. And he would go and visit his guru every day and perform so many pujas. And he would always chant Gaura, 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 the name of Gauranga, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then his daughter died in severe pain. So when his friend came to see him next time, he said, he didn't know his daughter had died. He said, how is your Gaura Bhajan going on? How is your worship of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu going on? He said, there is no Gauranga. If there had been, he would have saved my daughter. He would have expanded his glory and so many people would have worshipped him. So this man who was relating the story about his friend whose daughter had died, he asked Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur that how did he change from bhakti to an atheist so quickly? So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said that he was not worshipping Gauranga, but Satan in the name of Gauranga. He was not worshipping the Gauranga of Srivas Thakur. Srivas Thakur, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to perform kirtan in his home in the night. And one night during the kirtan, Srivas heard some crying from the back room. So he didn't want the kirtan to be disturbed, so he went out and stopped. Why all the women are crying? And they said, well, your son just died. He said, well, anyway, keep quiet, you can cry later, but don't disturb Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's kirtan. So later, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked, something happened in this house? And Srivas said, yes. What happened? Well, my son died. He said, well, why didn't you tell me? I didn't want to disturb your kirtan. So then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came and he called to that jiva who had left the body of Srivas' son. And the jiva spoke and said, yes, according to my karma, I took bath in this home and now I'm going away. And I pray for the blessings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as I go. So this is an example, this Srivas Thakur, he was not attached to putra dara grihadishu, to home, wife, children and so on, but he was fully attached to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Krishna. But generally people, if they worship God, they do so to increase their material attachments. And they try to adjust religion according to their own concepts. They think, what is nice for me, and in that way I shall take up religion. But here Krishna states that one has to give up all these materially contaminated attachments, and in this way one can begin to come to Krishna. Then one can begin to have faith that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that surrender to Him is the only purpose of life. Such faith is possible by Krishna's mercy, which manifests in the form of association with His devotees. Bhaktistu Bhagavad Bhakta Sangena Parijayate. Faith in Krishna comes about by association with His devotees. And when one begins to have such faith in Krishna, then he will make a deliberate endeavor to associate with devotees. This is described in these verses which Prabhupada has quoted. Ado Shraddha Tata Sadhu Sangha. When one associates with devotee means a person who has fully committed their life to Krishna, then one also desires to commit himself to Krishna. And therefore, one, under the guidance of devotees, takes up the process of what is called here bhajana kriya, activities of devotional service. These are listed, the 64 processes of devotional service are listed in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. When someone is convinced that life is meant for getting out of this ridiculous material world and going to Krishna, then he will take these things up. So the processes, those 64 processes are mentioned there. One should accept the Guru, and then under his guidance one should follow the things, performing Ekadashi and chanting the holy names, visiting the temple, all these different points like that. And as a result of following these processes, then anartha nivriti, all the bad things in the heart become diminished. It's understood when one first comes seriously to the process of bhakti, he may still have within his heart some attachment, fear and anger. But one has sufficiently become free from them that he can take up the process of bhakti seriously. When one takes up the process of bhakti seriously, then material attachments, leanings towards impersonal understanding of this nirguna upasana and this anger or rejection of God, these things become cleared out. Then one becomes fixed in understanding Krishna. One becomes very firm, and there's no going back. Yes, I must go forward always in Krishna consciousness. This feeling becomes very strong. Then one gets strong taste in bhakti. From the beginning in bhakti, there is feeling, taste. It is desirable. It is sweet. One more feels a taste for serving Krishna. When one feels the great transcendental pleasure in serving Krishna, then naturally one becomes very much attached to serving Krishna. Now here in the verse we're reading today, Krishna is stating that becoming free from attachment, one can start to worship me. But in the purport, Srila Prabhupada quotes a verse in which asakti, which again means attachment, this is attachment to Krishna, this is recommended as very good. So material attachment, that binds us to this material world. But attachment to Krishna binds us to Krishna. Krishna is not a product of this material world. Krishna is transcendental to this material world. This material world is a product of Krishna. So by becoming attached to Krishna, then we automatically transcend this material attachment. It's a very simple process. Some people, not very many, especially in the modern age, but some people are trying to get free from this material world. And they do so by performing severe austerities like this. A much more effective method is simply to develop one's attachment for Krishna. Because Krishna is fully transcendental beyond this material world. So if we become attached to Krishna, then automatically we cross into transcendence. And as we become more and more attached to Krishna, then our transcendental ecstatic feelings for Krishna develop, which develops more and more into full love of Krishna, Krishna prema. So these are the different stages of development of devotional service to Krishna. Mostly people have no idea of this, or if they have an idea of it, not a very clear idea of it. There are many misunderstandings about who is Krishna and what is the process of bhakti. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada has given this Bhagavad-gita as it is, just to make the matter very clear, to point out very clearly that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is not a personality of this material world. He is not devoid of personality, he is full of personality, but his personality is not contaminated by this material world. And everything that is going on in this world, whether it's so-called religious or political or social or educational or whatever it may be, which is not aimed at surrendering to Krishna, then it is simply another form of illusion. It will bind us to this material world. So, as Krishna is indicating here, one has to develop pure love for Krishna by giving up all material attachments, attachment to the impersonal method of worship, or rejection of God. Should I do that one at a time? By giving up material attachments, by giving up this concept of God as being impersonal, and by outright rejection or anger against religion and God. These are all obstacles on the path of understanding Krishna. So if one can understand this essential point, that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I am His eternal servant, my only real interest is in serving Him, then, this point is being made by Krishna in Bhagavad-gita, and actually throughout all the Vedic literatures. And if one can simply understand this point, then with this faith one can go forward and follow the process of Krishna Bhakti, become purified by that process, and go to Krishna, which is the perfection of life, as described in this verse. Vitaraga bhayakrodha manmaya mamupashritaha bahavo jnana tapasa putamad bhavamagataha. You get the translation? Alright, is there any question about this?
What is attachment?
What is the meaning for attachment?
What is the meaning for it?
That we were discussing in both in the purport and the class.
Someone will understand, someone will not understand.
Well, which point didn't you understand?
I'm not asking for me.
Now she's asking for that.
I know, but what point do you think the others didn't understand that?
No, sir, I'm not asking for myself.
Yeah, but what didn't you, I discussed it in the class.
What is the meaning for detachment in this world life?
Detachment.
Yeah.
Detachment. Attachment is spelled. Detachment means, as I quoted I think 3 times in the class from Bhagavad-gita, Anisha Anavishvanga Putra Dara Vihadishu. These are the main basic attachments that one has to home, wife and children. This is explained in detail in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Pumsastriya mituni bhavametam tayoraho hridya kantimaho ato griha kshetram sutakta vitaya janasya mohoyamaham ameti. Is described that the basic principle of material existence is attachment between male and female, which from that attachment expands attachment to one's home, one's country or one's local area in which one lives, to children, relatives, money, and in this way one becomes illusioned and thinks in terms of me, I, me and mine. In other words, one thinks that everything in relationship to this body is important. So, detachment means to understand that I am not this body, and all these things which are in relationship to the body are not actually in relationship to me. So that is detachment, and even better than detachment is attachment to what I really am. It's not very easy just to be detached from everything all around us, because we are living beings, so by nature we want to interact with other people and other things. So if we just try to stop being attached, it's not very easy. But if we become attached to Krishna, who is the transcendental personality of Godhead, this is our natural position of attachment. So if we become attached to Krishna, then very easily we can become detached from those things which bind us to this material world. It's not a difficult thing to understand that everything in this world is temporary. We shall only be here a short time. So better that we become attached to that which is eternal. Krishna is eternal, I am eternal, He is supreme, He is the eternal Supreme Lord, I am His eternal servant, so let me be attached to Him. By becoming attached to Krishna, we become detached from everything material. Are there any other questions?
Attachment means desire.
No, attachment and desire are not exactly the same thing. Desire comes from attachment, and attachment comes from desire. Attachment means that long-standing or fixed desire. Desire is vague, but attachment means attachment to a particular thing. Just like in the in the fairy stories, like in the movies or something, they'll say that one young boy will say that to a young girl that, well, I cannot live without you. Actually, he can. I mean, the body lives by taking food and all these things. But because he's become emotionally attached to another body, then he thinks, I cannot live without this body. So this is an example of attachment. Due to that attachment, one has to take birth again and again.
What's the theme of this meeting and this bhajans? What's the theme in Bhagavad-gita?
The theme of Bhagavad-gita is that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Forgetting Him, we are in this material world. Therefore, we should surrender to Him and go back to Him, back to Krishna. You please take one copy. We have here.
No, sir, I am having Bhagavad-gita, sir. I am having all devotions, but I want to ask this question because no one is
well, do you have this Bhagavad-gita Unmai Aravil?
Which Bhagavad-gita you get?
I am having.
Which this Bhagavad-gita as it is, do you have that?
So many Bhagavad-gita is there.
No one in that Upanishads, all I am having.
Do you have this Bhagavad-gita as it is?
Yeah, I am having.
This particular edition?
No, not that edition.
Then you won't get any benefit.
Why, sir?
Because this is Bhagavad-gita as it is, and other editions are Bhagavad-gita as it is not. That is why. I'll explain. Mostly people are giving their own interpretation according to their attachment, fear and anger. They're giving their interpretation according to their material attachment. They say, just like Tilak, he's given his edition of Bhagavad-gita, you just do work. Wait a minute, I didn't finish speaking. Remain attached in this material world. That is his interpretation of Bhagavad-gita. Remain attached in this material world. That is his misinterpretation of Bhagavad-gita. Then most of the interpretations of Bhagavad-gita, they try to represent Krishna or the Supreme Truth as something impersonal. Just like Dr. Radha Krishna has given his interpretation of in which Krishna says, Manmana Bhagavan Bhakto, always think of me and become my devotee. But he has given in his purport that it is not to the person Krishna, that is not the person Krishna that we should think of, but the unborn eternal within Krishna. Which is not what Krishna says. So it's not Bhagavad-gita as it is. It's Bhagavad-gita according to Dr. Radha Krishna. But we want Bhagavad-gita according to Krishna himself. And there are others who give their interpretation of Bhagavad-gita. To listen, you ask questions but you don't like to listen to the answer. You don't like to listen to the answer, but you're not listening, you're talking.
Okay, sir, I'm listening you only.
Please listen. So, if one is inimical towards God and then he tries to make some commentary, then that will be the worst of all. So Krishna gives this summary of Bhagavad-gita that one should always think of him, become his devotee, surrender to him. But there are so many editions of Bhagavad-gita and people read it and they become very puffed up and think I'm a great scholar of Bhagavad-gita. But they don't follow the process of Bhakti Yoga given by Krishna. They don't surrender to Krishna. So in the name of Bhagavad-gita, they just remain attached in this material world and don't actually come to Krishna. So these editions of Bhagavad-gita, they're practically worse than useless because they don't serve the point of Bhagavad-gita, which is that we should surrender to Krishna. So the misfortune that you've had of reading all these bogus editions of Bhagavad-gita, you can now rectify that if you can accept that actually I'm not such a greatly advanced person as I might think I am, and take Bhagavad-gita as it is. And then your actual fortune will begin. As long as we don't surrender to Krishna, even if we know all the verses of Bhagavad-gita and we can say them back to front, then there's no real value. Just like you can study, now they have a subject in the university, dairy science. Previously people used to keep cows, they would feed them grass, they would take the milk and that was it. Now they have study in the university, dairy science. So you can study milk and become an expert in milk. What are the different varieties of milk? Which different cows give different types of milk? And by feeding cows, which different kind of feed, what quality of milk you get? What is the nutritive value of milk? You can become a complete expert on dairy science. But if you don't drink milk, then you won't get any benefit from it. So in the same way, one can become a theoretical student of Bhagavad-gita. But unless one actually takes up what Krishna says in Bhagavad-gita, which is to perform his Ananya Bhakti, his pure devotional service, then you become an empty scholar. This is what Krishna is teaching in Bhagavad-gita. Ananyas chintayantavam, ananya cheta satatam, manmana bhavanatvam, janma kama chamedevyam, vivanga veti tatvatha, tyagvadayam punajamma, naiti mameti sojana, sarvadhamam parityaja, mamekam sharanyaja. Again and again, Krishna is saying, you become fully dedicated to me. This is the message of Bhagavad-gita.
Okay, thank you.
So please take it up. No use to say thank you unless you take it into your heart.
I've taken it fully.
No use to simply, formally, as a politeness, say thank you. That's better than throwing stones at me.
Now, given me a great message, sir. For that only I told.
Yes. So, actually I didn't give you yet. You have to take this book.
Okay.
Then you will get the benefit. Then you have to read it and follow it.
Taking the book, I won't get it.
No, I said that. No, you didn't listen. I said you have to read it and follow it also.
I want your blessing, sir. Then only I can enter into it.
Yes. Whatever. I am powerless, but I have Guru Charan here. Therefore I can say, you please take this. Take it into your home, take it into your mind, take it into your heart and practice it. And Krishna will help you. He promises that in Bhagavad-gita. What does Krishna say in Bhagavad-gita? How he helps people who come to him? Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mamo. Krishna says to those who are satata yukta, those who are always engaged in endeavoring for me, and bhajatam priti purvakam, they worship me not simply out of formality, but with an attitude of love. Then Krishna says, to such persons, I give them the intelligence by which they can come to me. So I certainly pray to Krishna that your attachments, fear and anger, whatever they may be, that is the subject of discussion in today's verse, may be cleared away so that you can come to the very sweet, pleasing and pure path of devotional service to Krishna. Are there any other questions from anyone else?